Hi everybody and welcome back to Be Like Christ. There's a story in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 25. It's a parable that Jesus tells about a master, and he's going into a far country taking a trip, and he's got 3 servants, and he leaves each one of those servants a certain portion of money. To the first servant he leaves 5 pieces, to the second servant he leaves 2 pieces, and to the last servant he leaves 1 piece. And he tells his servants, while I'm gone, I want you to use this money and I want you to make me even more money. Put my money to use so that when I come back I have profits. And so after a long time, the master returns home and he calls his servants to give an account for what they've done with his money. And there's one servant who he gave 5 pieces to who made an additional 5 pieces with that money. And the master's really pleased with him. The other servant who had 2 pieces, he made 2 more pieces and the master was also pleased with him. But the man who had just 1 piece, the master wasn't pleased with at all, because what that servant had done is he was afraid of the master because he knew the master would call him into account one day. And so he buried the master's piece and he didn't make any profits. He didn't put it to work. And the master was not happy at all. And the master says to the servant, he says, look, you could have at least put my money in the bank so that I could have a little bit of interest on it when I came back, but you didn't even do that. And there's so many lessons that we can learn from this parable. But I think one that's really necessary for the church today is that we ought to err a little bit more on the side of action rather than the side of caution. And I think that's important because I think there are a lot of people sitting in the pews of church buildings who are afraid to take action because they're afraid of what people might think about them or might say about them. They're afraid to have a Bible study with somebody because maybe they don't feel like they know enough. They may not want to get up and lead worship because their voice might crack while they're singing. They may have an opportunity to do public speaking or maybe even preach a sermon, and they turn down that opportunity because they're afraid that they might mess it up. People may be afraid to step into leadership roles because they think, I don't know that I can do well, and what if I fail? It'll be terrible. Or maybe they have an idea for a program or for an approach that the church can take in evangelism or some other area, and they're afraid to propose it to the congregation because they're afraid that if it fails, they're going to look bad. Maybe it's teaching a Bible class, or maybe even teaching a hard passage of the Bible. They think, what if I teach something wrong? And so not only they, but large groups of people in the church can become paralyzed by a fear of failure. And this can lock up whole congregations from really experiencing any growth and experiencing any maturity and development because everyone in the congregation is worried that they're going to mess up and the people who are sitting in the pews behind them are going to gossip about them and talk about how badly they messed up. And one thing that this parable about the pieces of money teaches us is that God in our Christian lives expects action. He doesn't demand a particular result, but he does demand action. I suspect that the church is probably guilty of erring on the side of caution a little too often. It's time for the church to take action. There's another aspect that plays into this as well, and that is that we have to be supportive as Christians of each other and our attempts to take action. Part of the reason people are afraid to take action is because they know that they'll be gossiped about, or they know that people will laugh at them. And truthfully, the church sometimes is guilty at talking about people's failures and always critiquing each other, rather than seeing those people who are trying and maybe failing as people who are trying to grow in their Christian life and trying to do the things that God asks them to do and supporting them and building them up and helping them do better the next time. So on an individual level, your call is to take action. And in a group, in a congregational, in a Christian level, we have a responsibility to support other people who are trying to do the same thing.